From Buell to Harley Davidson to the birth of Livewire, Vance Strader has been at the heart of some of the most iconic motorcycles of our time. As a leader, innovator, and former CTO of Livewire, he's helped shape the past, present, and future of two-wheeled performance. So get ready, this is one ride you don't want to miss.
Consistently with my teams, I pushed for people to be creative, to be innovative, to think about our riders, and just to never settle and to just keep pushing for great.
Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com, where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
Hey, One Gang, welcome to the show. Today we've got the mighty Vance Strader with us. We are beyond excited. This is going to be an awesome one. So many questions, such an incredible life. We're really excited for your insight and kind of behind the scenes looks at everything you've been doing. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's really my pleasure, guys.
Vance, thanks so much for coming on, man. Yeah, we've been geeking out on this one, so I'm totally excited. As we do all our podcasts, let's take it way back. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up for most of my childhood in Southern California, just up the coast from Los Angeles. And there were a couple years, second and third grade, where my family moved to the Netherlands.
Wow.
And for my dad's job. And then we came back to the same house in Southern California and up through college. And then after that.
Nice. Wait, were you always a problem solver as a kid, or did that come later through schooling and racing culture?
No, really, math and science and stuff was just something that I always happened to be good at, and just loved that challenge of solving difficult problems and then tying it to things that I actually loved doing, like bicycles, motorcycles, stuff like that.
Nice.
Right.
Hey, when did you first start riding? How old were you?
Well, technically, my first ride on a powered two-wheeler was on a family friend's farm in West Virginia. They actually grew up next to us when I was like 5 years old. I must have been like 7 or so.
Nice.
And they had a mini bike there. And it was my first time I rode something powered with two wheels.
Right.
And my world was blown up. It was unbelievable. I thought, this is amazing. And, it probably maxed out at like 15 miles an hour or something. But as a 7-year-old,
yeah, man.
I was like, this is it.
That's so fun.
And then I think at around 9 years old, my dad, he rode dirt bikes and on the street. And he bought me my first dirt bike, which was a Yamaha YZ80.
YZ80.
And so
great bike.
I think around 9 or 10 years old. And so that's the first time I had an actual motorcycle.
Did you do anything with bikes through that? Did you do any kind of racing, any of that stuff as a kid, or did you just enjoy it for fun and leisure?
Yeah, never officially raced. I mean, my buddies and I, we would just race each other, but never actually went and formally raced.
That's cool.
Right on. All right, so your kid growing up, go to college. After college came Parker Hannafin, where you worked on precision sealing systems. So how did that experience influence your approach to technical detail and quality once you transitioned into the motorcycle world?
Well, that was really just my first real job. And so I learned a lot of important stuff there, but it was more about just how to operate in a professional environment and
learn the ropes.
And I just had some good mentors there. In fact, the guy that really stands out, he's probably no longer with us, but his name was Jerry Jelinek. He was the manager of our engineering group there. He actually designed the seals for the space station where the modules connect to each other. He figured out how to do that. Man. So, they connect, kind of lock together and everything seals properly. And he was just an amazing, humble engineering leader, and I learned a lot from him.
Man, that's cool. That's interesting, especially coming out of college. You get to work with somebody like that. I mean, that's really good hands-on education. So before motorcycles, you spent several years at Team Losi, leading the design of high-end RC race cars, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Um,
Yeah, that was one where, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say like you were developing software, designing suspension systems, even building some CNC parts in house. My question is like, how did that hands-on experience in precision engineering, performance, tuning shape what was coming up next for you? Like, take us a little bit into that world of Team Losi.
Yeah. Yeah. Team Losi was a really interesting experience for me. Originally, when I was approached to go consider working for them, I thought, no, I didn't really know much about RC race cars then. I was like, yeah, no. And they convinced me to just come. They said, just come and meet with us. Come check it out, see what we're doing. And what I learned is it was hyper competitive. So the company had a race team. In fact, there were some people who were paid to do nothing but race. There were others who they did the racing part time, but it was a serious thing, national world championship level. They raced all around the world, and so for me, it was a small company, family owned company, and I was the only design engineer, and so I designed, I don't remember how many, maybe like 6 cars, and worked with the team to develop them, refine them in testing. And there's just a lot of value in working in an environment like that where you do everything.
Yeah.
And I did everything from designing the parts to the whole vehicle to doing all the drawings, working with all of the suppliers on making parts. But then even things like making all of the images for the assembly manuals and stuff, and figuring out, you mentioned CNC machining. They had machining, but not CNC machining. Bringing that in house and figuring out how to. I'd never run CAM software before, and so figuring that out and doing it, and it was just a time of incredible learning.
Man, I can imagine.
And it's like there were no constraints. The owner's son was really the brains behind it. He had developed the first car the first car he raced them, but he also he just had this intuitive sense for how race cars worked, and
Nice.
but didn't have any formal education in engineering or anything. And so I was able to work with him. He had all these amazing creative ideas, and he'd wake up at night and come up with something crazy, and then the next day I'd figure out, I'd design it, we prototype it, we test it. And so just this, it really refined my thinking around what was possible and how to go from an idea to prototypes, test it quickly, and kind of set aside the status quo and what most people would think could be done, and just assume that anything could be done.
It's awesome.
And try to do it, see what happened, because even if it failed, you were going to learn something. And we were able to do that so fast. And in comparison to full size race cars, we could come up with an idea in the morning, design it, prototype it, and by that night be testing it.
Wow.
And so, I mean,
Wow.
that's just inconceivable in most forms of auto racing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, were you a gearhead growing up? Like, did you love cars and bikes and stuff? So that must have been pretty sweet. Were you like going into that type of a world where you get to use your creativity to design stuff for something you're truly passionate about? I mean, not a lot of people get a chance to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It really was. Even though initially I kind of downplayed like how cool that role would be, it turned out to be amazing. I learned so much.
I can imagine.
In fact, at one point for a while, the company Team Losi sponsored an IndyCar racing team.
Cool.
And was one of the larger sponsors. This was a smaller team, but I had the opportunity when they visited our facility to meet with their chief engineer and spend an afternoon just kind of exchanging notes about
Picking his brain.
suspension design, testing, development, some of the things we were seeing and testing. And it was amazing. We found like there was something that was happening in suspension that we had both experienced, and we figured out why it was happening, and they hadn't yet.
That's incredible.
Cool.
It blew me away.
Yeah, man. Wow.
That point. that it was largely because we could develop and learn so fast and so inexpensively that combined with some tools that I had developed or brought in, helped us really understand those kinds of problems in a new way.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, I mean, I feel, kind of bad jumping straight into the next thing because there's so much to talk about in each chapter of your life. But so let's talk about Buell. When you joined in the late 90s, the company was building wild performance-focused machines. What was it like working under Eric Buell, and what do you remember most about developing the XB platform and the Firebolt XB9R? And take us into the early years. What was Buell like then?
Yeah, I'm so interested to hear this.
Yep.
Yeah. So Buell was very much like a startup. When I first joined, Harley owned 50% of the company.
Okay.
Soon after I joined, he bought the rest. But it really operated as a separate division of Harley. And so, we had a lot of latitude. We didn't always have a lot of budget, but we had a lot of latitude to do what we wanted.
Okay.
And Eric was a guy who, similar to what I described earlier, he knew no limits. He assumed everything was possible. And I think it's part of the reason he and I got along well is we had that in common. But Eric was and is just an amazing creative guy, super passionate. And I'll just take a quick aside. And tell you something funny
for
about
sure.
Eric.
That'd be awesome, man.
Yeah.
Any tidbit.
So I hadn't seen him in a number of years, and my wife and I we were I don't even remember where we were going. I think we visited some national parks, and we were flying through Denver, and I ran into him in the airport, or I saw him. We were waiting at our gate, and I saw him off at the next gate. And I told my wife, I said, "Hey, that's Eric Buell," and I said, "Let's just I'm going to go talk to him, and let's just see if he's the same guy." So she stayed there and she just kind of watched. And I said, "You'll know for sure that it's Eric if you start seeing arms waving and like you can tell like he's like into this conversation." And sure enough, he is just so passionate about what he does, and he has such breadth of experiences, and he's been through amazing highs and crazy lows, and he always comes back and he has some new idea, a new way to approach things. And so it was awesome working for Eric. Not always easy. When I left Buell, I believe I had the record for the most years working directly for Eric.
Really?
And
Wow.
So he wasn't easy to work for. Wow.
No, and I would imagine he would probably admit that now, that he was not always an easy guy to work for. I mean, he wore his emotions on his sleeve.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in the early years, didn't have a lot of filter. And I could remember, there was a time we'd go out to lunch once a week and just talk about how things are going. We were at some small cafe in East Troy, and small table, just 2-seater. And at one point in the conversation, I remember he was up on the table, like in my face, like this, talking pretty loud. And those were just the kind of things that you just became accustomed to. And it wasn't because he was a mean guy.
Right.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave Leather Up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself.
Right.
That he was so passionate about what he was doing, and he just did not accept anything other than the best.
And you know what?
And
most madmen are, right? So most people who are visionaries, they have their good side, but obviously when it's work related type of stuff, they have no filters. They go full speed on how they think and they speak how they think. That is incredible. Go ahead. But you were saying?
Yeah. So it was always fun working for Eric, but not always easy.
Understand.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave Leather Up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself.
So you asked about the XB. Well, when I was first hired to I think it was like lead project engineer or something like that. My formal responsibility was to lead the development of a new motorcycle platform based on a new water-cooled V-twin engine that was going to be shared with Harley Davidson. That ultimately became the V-Rod engine. And so within like a couple of weeks of joining the company, I remember flying to Germany to meet with Porsche Engineering Services, who we were partnering with and Harley was partnering with to develop the engine for us.
Cool.
And
Was this the Evo?
no, this was the V-Rod engine, the
V-Rod.
Revolution.
Oh, the Revolution. Okay. Yep.
Isn't that what it's called? The Revolution?
Yeah, the Revolution. Yep. The 1250,
Yeah,
right?
so, yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's right. And so, I was still like getting the lay of the land at Buell, and we got to Germany, and I'm sitting in these reviews of the project and the designs and stuff. And like every hour that passed, my level of dread just got higher and higher and higher. And then when I came back to East Troy and learned more about where this project actually stood, I'm like, this thing is super messed up. Like it in many ways. And so there were difficulties in the engine, the transmission, but also some of the work that had been in process at Buell. I found like in some areas, the team had sort of designed themselves into a corner and there was not an easy way out. And so it was just a little different than the approach to the design than I was accustomed to, having free reign to do things the way that I felt was best at Team Losi in terms of how a design was developed, how it was evolved, how you refine it, how you validate it, all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, oh man, did I make a mistake coming to this company? Everything looked great on the outside, but oh man, what's going on? Well, to make a long story a little shorter, because there were so many challenges with the engine and transmission at that point in the development, Harley made the decision to stop work on a separate Buell version and just focus on the Harley version of the engine. And that Buell would have the option to use that version of the engine if it wanted to, which we didn't want to because it was big, heavy, not optimized sport bike. And so that basically killed that program. Now, having said that, I said there's a lot of things that were kind of messed up in the design and just kind of how things were going. There were also a lot of really cool things. So Eric had some really neat ideas that were embedded into some of the early prototypes and the concepts that were being developed for that platform. And it was after that project was canceled that Eric and I sat down and we said, all right, what are we going to do? And it was at that point we started conceiving the XB and the Firebolt, what became the Firebolt, and that full XB platform. And some of the unique designs that you see in that were ideas that he had years ago that were in some of those early concepts for the water-cooled platform.
Right.
And things like putting the fuel in the frame.
Yep.
And he had this idea for an inside-out brake.
Yeah, the rim-mounted brakes. Yep, I remember that.
Putting oil in the swing arm. Like he had all these ideas. And for me, it was like a breath of fresh air to step back and say, all right, let's figure out which of these ideas we ought to use, what kind of engine we're going to build it around, and then have a bit more of a clean slate to start with, and do things in a bit more organized and structured way. And that's really what ended up being the beginning of the XB project.
And that sounds like it may not have happened unless it was for the V-Rod mishap. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I remember, man, the Buells were, because they were so affordable, younger guys could buy them. I mean, they were great bikes performance-wise. Hey, can I ask you a question on this part? You kind of answered a lot of the things that I was going into. And I know that by him proposing things like the fuel and frame, rim-mounted brakes, innovative chassis, doing other things, obviously it did shape your creative confidence even more, considering what you were coming from and now to this. So it's challenging you. What happened? What truly do you think happened between Harley Davidson and Buell? Why did they split?
Yeah. Well, when they split, it wasn't really because of any specific issue between Harley and Buell. If you recall, that was after the 2008 economic meltdown.
Yep. Right.
And Keith Wendell at the time was the CEO at Harley. And by the way, great CEO, did all sorts of good things.
Yeah,
for
he
Harley.
did. He did. He was a good one.
And he made the decision that Harley needed to focus, that Harley was not in good shape at that point financially. There were a lot of reasons for that. And though Buell wasn't necessarily one of the primary reasons for the difficulties Harley was facing, it was a straightforward lever to pull to preserve cash and to create more focus for the Harley Davidson team. Now, you could argue whether or not it was the right thing to do, but he at least had at minimum, I think most people would agree that he had good rationale for making a decision.
Gotcha.
And so that time, he said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're shutting Buell down.
Man.
So Buell basically, after they transitioned, Buell kind of stopped making, they concentrated more on the sport bikes, right? Eric was doing more sport bikes. And then they just over the last, maybe 5 years or so, they've really come back into the world of cruisers where they're building kind of FXR style type bikes, right? So what's transitioned after Harley was done, after the split in 2008 to most recent, he was just kind of kept it small and concentrated on his race bikes?
Yeah. So I actually left in around, I think it was around 2006. So I left before that stuff happened. I went over to Harley. But yeah, after that, he formed Eric Buell Racing.
Yeah.
And because you'll remember that Harley owned not only the company, but owned the name.
Right.
And so Eric said, all right, I gotta start a new company kind of from scratch, Eric Buell Racing. He did end up with some important assets that he was able to get from Harley that allowed him to continue work on some of the bikes and the next evolution of the bike. So even while I was there, one of the things I did after the XB was begin the development of the 1125 platform.
That was a beautiful bike.
Yeah, actually, one of my funnest bikes that I've owned was the 1125 CR. It was kind of a Street Fighter
it was
version.
A great bike.
Yeah.
That bike should have done a lot more out there than it did. I love that thing. Thanks for answering. I appreciate that.
But yeah, Eric then took that 1125 platform as a starting point, updated the engine. His team had already been working on some really cool next generation designs to take a bunch of weight out and improve the performance of that platform.
Mhm.
And they built some really cool bikes, the 1190, I forget the exact designations, but kind of the next evolution of that Rotex engine that we had originally spec'd out and worked on with Rotex. Yeah. Built some really competitive bikes,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
under the banner of Eric Buell Racing. But
That's right.
I think one of the things that Eric struggled with from day one is he never seemed to have quite enough budget to do things the way he wanted to. And I'm not suggesting that it's his fault. Circumstances were such that he often had to work with shoestring budgets and not enough time. I think the time part was potentially his doing because he always wanted things in extraordinarily short time frames. But yeah, so he's constantly struggled with having enough budget, and I think that was the case at Eric Buell Racing as well. And so he had various investors that like Hero, for example, that he worked with along the way to help keep the company afloat, and they did some cool work with some of those partners. But eventually, that company died as well.
Yeah.
EBR, and so I think that the current owner just kind of picked up the pieces, bought it. I think I heard like $2 million, and then convinced Harley to give him the Buell Motorcycles name as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really at this point, as far as I know, it has nothing to do with Eric Buell. It's a new owner. He's got not only the name but a lot of the assets from Eric Buell Racing after the company.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's that behind the scenes insight we're looking for.
Yeah, man, that's awesome, man. This is like.
And Vance, you mentioned it briefly. So after the Buell chapter, you transitioned into Harley Davidson corporate. How different was that environment culturally, and what were the biggest adjustments you had to make as a technical leader?
Yeah. Big way to answer that is when I mentioned that what I had become accustomed to at Team Losi, as the only design engineer, there was a guy who was more of a manufacturing engineer, and that was it for engineering there. And so I had to find ways to work that were super efficient, cost effective, and so I kind of developed a product development approach that seemed to work there. I went to Buell, and I remember just looking around and seeing and hearing what was going on there. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away by people's apparent willingness to spend tens of thousands of dollars in ways that seemed super wasteful. And like, they didn't even seem to care. Or even at times, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like, oh my gosh.
Like what though? What kind of wasteful stuff?
Well, an example might be paying somebody, a consultant, to do something that we really ought to be able to do ourselves, and spending tens of thousands of dollars to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Or like making prototype parts in a really expensive way where there was another approach that could very well have given us the learning we needed without spending all that money.
Yeah. What a culture shock, and going from shoestring over to throwing money around. That's wild.
Yeah. And that was at Buell. And then as I started working with Harley when we were in the midst of the XB program, because Harley did the work on the engine, because it was kind of a cross between Sportster engine and taking some of the changes that had been made for the Buell Blast, or that were being made for the Buell Blast, and turning that into more of a high performance V-twin. So I started working with the Harley team, and it was like the same thing I witnessed at Buell times 100. Yeah. Like the amount of lack of concern for spending, the waste I saw, like how many people were in meetings and didn't need to be there.
Corporate.
Oh my gosh, it blew me away.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the biggest adjustments for me, was just and what to do when you see this level of inefficiency
Right.
and waste and blowing money. Now, for much of the time that I was involved with Harley, they were just making money like nobody's business. And so, perhaps you could argue that it didn't matter as much. But inevitably, those good times would not last forever.
Yes.
And
Vance, what was your responsibilities when you first went over to Harley?
my first job at Harley was in strategic planning. So this was at the same time I had started my MBA, because after having a mechanical engineering degree, I felt like the technical stuff was really had become second nature for me.
Right.
But I didn't know enough about how the business actually worked, and finance and strategy and marketing and some of these other pieces that I just didn't feel like I was informed enough to be able to make good decisions for the teams I was responsible for on the technical side.
That's a tough spot.
And so, I was, even when I moved to Harley, I was still in the MBA program, and made the decision to take a role at Harley doing strategic planning, leading the development of sales and marketing strategies for Harley. And it was partly just so I could fully utilize what I was learning as I was learning it, outside of the core technical work that I had done for the prior part of my career. I only did that for, I don't know, maybe it was 9 months or so. And I always knew that I was going to get back to some sort of a technical focused, product focused role.
Did you enjoy that other
but
side at all? Or was it kind of like you were
briefly
past it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. It was very helpful to do. I enjoyed it, several aspects of it, but it's not something I would want to do long term.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason I got into engineering is because of the product.
Of course.
I wanted to design cars and motorcycles, and I was super passionate, still am passionate about those things. So developing sales and marketing strategies, good learning, but no, I don't want to spend my time that long.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because that kind of transitions us to this next question, because you led the Harley's Advanced Motorcycle Group, which helped their first EV prototype back in 2010, correct?
Yeah, that's when we started the project, was in 2010.
Can you take us inside that era? Like, and how radical did electrification seem at that time when you guys which, I mean, Harley and electric motorcycles, it's, it's a forbidden combination. So that's why I'm so curious how that transitioned back in 2010.
Yeah, it was super interesting. So the origins of that project and electrification at Harley was Jochen Zeitz, current CEO. At that time, he recently joined the Harley board, having previous to that brought Puma back from bankruptcy and really developed it into a globally respected, profitable brand. So I know there's a lot going on with Jochen right now, but regardless of what people think about him, he certainly has a track record that should be respected. He's clearly a smart guy. I'm not going to get into, the details of what's happening now.
I understand.
But at the time, he was a board member, and he felt very strongly about sustainability. At Puma, he had done things like change their packaging so that it saved all kinds of waste and things like that. So it was something that was important to him. And as a board member at Harley, he said Harley needs to start thinking about sustainability and doing something to demonstrate serious about sustainability. So I'd caught wind of this, and I had told pretty much everyone at Harley that would listen that if ever Harley wanted to do a project in this space, I wanted to lead it. And I had some strong opinions about what it should be. So there was all sorts of discussion about, what should Harley do relative to sustainability? And people were talking about biofuels and hybrid motorcycle. There was a whole bunch of ideas. And I felt strongly and I learned a lot from my experience at Team Losi, where I developed cars that were electric and cars that were gas powered. And I felt like electric could be a thing. And at that time in 2010, if you think back to what sort of electric cars were out there then, everything there was lame.
Right.
The one sort of exception might be the Tesla Roadster, the original Tesla Roadster, which I think was probably somewhere just before that it had come to the market. And I think one of the things that was unique about that I felt was a real opportunity was to use EV to deliver a better riding experience.
Right.
And for me, there's environmental benefits and all that, but for me, that was secondary. My passion, what drove me and made me want to be the guy to lead the development of an electric motorcycle is I believed we could make it better in some ways, in ways that actually mattered to a rider. And so that was the beginning. And fortunately, I had the opportunity in the beginning of 2010 to put a team together and a small team, 5 people, and build some prototypes to show what this thing could be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started.
How did you feel? Why did you feel, or how did you feel that by creating this, you would give the rider a better experience? Can you explain that part of it?
I was going to ask this.
Yeah. So to answer that question, I'll start by going back to Buell. There was a point in time, it was when we were sort of conceiving the 1125 project. And I spent my time at Buell and my time at Harley, I spent a lot of time on competitors' motorcycles. And one of the bikes when I was at Buell, I spent a lot of time on was the Honda RC51. It was there. So it was at a time when Ducati in superbike racing was enjoying some of the advantages that were inherent to a V-twin configuration. And so Ducati was doing really well. And I believe this was Honda's response to Ducati developing the RC51. Nicky
Hayden, yep.
And so I thought it was a really interesting bike. And I also spent time on bikes like the Yamaha R1 and some of these other leader class sport bikes. And there was something about the RC51. I mean, I didn't like everything about it, but there was something about it that as I was riding and using it for commuting and just riding for fun, something about it I really liked. And as I can remember on the way home from East Troy to where I was living closer to Milwaukee, I was just riding along on the freeway and doing roll-ons like from 50 miles an hour or something. And I did it in top gear, in 6th gear, then in 5th gear, then 4th gear. And I remember this feeling when I did a 50 mile an hour roll-on in 3rd gear, it was amazing.
Right.
And that is what our next motorcycle should feel like.
Got it.
And so that was one of the things that I felt as a rider that if you could deliver that level of torque, that level of acceleration at speed,
mm-hmm.
It's an amazing experience. It's a feeling that is pretty unique.
It is.
And so that influenced, some of the early work I did in the architecture of the 1125, some of the early discussion, road tax, stuff like that. But that just kind of stuck with me after that. And so when it came to Harley, and I had the opportunity to lead the development of the very first Harley electric prototypes, that was always in the back of my mind. And especially with my MBA education, I knew that I had to be thinking, though, also about the tie to the Harley brand and what Harley really stood for and what the Harley riding experience should be. And how can we make an electric motorcycle feel like a Harley?
Mm.
And so I remember sitting down and writing down the requirements and writing down what it should be like. And at the time, they had this kind of, I forget what they called it, but it's like a document that defined the brand. And it defined different attributes of the Harley brand. And one of them was muscle. and there was all kinds of verbiage explaining what does that really mean. And so for anybody that rides a Harley today, the stereotypical Harley, whether it's a cruiser or a touring bike, there's something about the feeling of rolling on the throttle on one of those bikes that is interesting, that is unique.
Absolutely.
And so this idea, it's this muscular feeling. It's not like a high revving 4-cylinder engine. It's not at all like that. It's a different kind of feeling. It's like this deep, guttural, muscular feeling. And so knowing that the EV wasn't going to have the typical Harley sound or the typical Harley vibration or a lot of the other things that are the kind of easy things to associate with riding Harley, it was that muscular feel that I felt was going to be the key. And then I tied it back to that experience of doing third gear, 50-mile-an-hour roll-ons on the RC51. And I can remember talking with the team about this, and one of the guys, Mike Alstrand, who really, he drove a lot of the core engineering that led to the specific configuration we chose, like gearing, the what the torque curve needed to look like, the power curve, all that. And so that was the main thing. So I'll pause there. I said a lot there that I'm not sure I even directly answered your question. So
no, you did. You did. You really did. You answered a lot of the questions. So
yeah,
thank you. I was really curious about what went into that. It's I would buy and sell Harleys. I specialized in low mileage Harleys, and I bought a Livewire. My first one. It was the first time I ever got on an electric bike, and I was really blown away. It's not like riding a motorcycle. It's like being launched. But I was like, wow, the smoothness of that acceleration to take off that quick like that blew me away.
Yeah. One of the things, a phrase that I used a lot in those early days was the purity of the riding experience. And we had some ideas too that actually never saw the light of day. But the concept was about making that the riding of that vehicle as pure as possible, where you're eliminating things that often you have to do on a motorcycle today to focus on the things that are most important. And my interpretation of that for that vehicle was what's most important is like this super intuitive feeling of being totally connected between the throttle and acceleration, where it's just seamless and the response is super intuitive. And, like you said, you feel like you're being launched off an aircraft carrier or something when you really whack the throttle. But what's also very interesting is I've had many new riders ride that bike and say that's the easiest motorcycle that they have ever ridden because it is so intuitive. Now, yeah, they're not twisting the throttle all the way, but they find it very easy because you're not having to deal with using all 4 limbs at the same time with clutch, shifting, and all that. It simplifies it. So it's the connection between throttle and acceleration and steering. And other than that, especially on that bike, you don't have a lot in front of you. So it's almost like you're flying. And especially, a big part of motorcycling for many people is just fully immersing yourself in your environment, being able to see things, being able to hear things. Like I talked before we started, I talked with you guys about the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is right near me here. That's a great example where that's part of what's so cool about being on a motorcycle is as you're kind of going through these sweeping curves, you hear everything. You hear birds, you're smelling what it's like there.
You're so in tune.
Yes. And you get that on all motorcycles, but with an EV, you hear more. You just, a lot of that experience of immersing yourself in the environment is heightened because you've taken away some of those distractions. Now, I know for some people, a big part of motorcycling is the sound, the exhaust, and even some of the intakes. And that's really cool. But if you're willing to set that aside you can have this even more pure experience when you eliminate those sounds, you eliminate the clunking of shifting and having to do that. And you just get 100% focused on the simple act of riding and just flying through your environment and further immersing yourself in it.
Gotcha.
That's interesting to compare the opinion-based pros and cons and think about, you're trying to match that muscle word where you're rolling on the throttle, and sound is such a large component of that for so many people. And so the trade-off of being more immersed in your environment is really an interesting kind of measurement there to weigh against. So
Right.
next topic, you stood up the engineering systems group at Harley from scratch with over 120 experts across core functions. How do you build an engineering organization like that from zero? What were your priorities?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I should clarify that it's not like none of those people existed in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to literally build it from zero, because the majority of the staff came
Or
from
internal already.
other departments.
Okay.
And so I was able to kind of pull people together that were already in the company, already proven. And the whole point of building that part of the organization was to develop deeper expertise that would inform work that teams were doing and support work that teams were doing on motorcycle projects in order to improve the effectiveness of the designs, improve the manufacturability of designs, keep the costs where they should be, improve performance, improve quality of the products. And so it was to have people that had areas of expertise that they would be really deep, and that they would be almost like an internal expert to support all the people that would need to tap into that. So for example, there was one guy who was a transmission expert and gearing expert. And so he was able to support then multiple projects with that kind of work and provide the best expertise the company could put together. And similar for all of the core areas of a motorcycle and core engineering disciplines. And so it ended up becoming quite valuable. And again, not just by systems of the motorcycle, but even particular disciplines. Like, for example, it includes the group that does all of the simulation. And Harley really has, even today, world-class simulation capabilities that allow them to do things very quickly. In fact, when we developed the S2 platform, that work started at Harley and then became solely done at Livewire. That was the first project to eliminate the earliest build, a proof of concept build, completely eliminated through the use of very advanced simulation.
Wow.
And so one of the many groups within that organization that developed world-class capabilities to support the broader Harley Davidson product development organization.
Man, amazing. So as a group chief engineer, we kind of talked about this off the air before we started. You ride Pan America now. You helped launch modular middleweight platforms that gave us the Pan America, Sportster S, all these new beautiful looking bikes that are coming out, have been out. What went into that design architecture, and what were some of the goals behind the radical changes in the direction you guys were going?
Yeah, that was a really fun time.
Man, for sure.
We started with the obvious things. What are we trying to accomplish? And we had envisioned a whole range of types of motorcycles that would be built on that middleweight platform. That included the adventure bike that really pushed in one direction, tall, more suspension, off-road capable, or light off-road capable.
Light off-road, yep.
A cruiser styled motorcycle that pushed in the other direction, low, just very different characteristics. It's public that people have seen that there was a Street Fighter version that was envisioned to be part of that portfolio. I think there are pictures of it online, but That one has not come to production as of yet. And so we started by making sure that we were aligned on all the different directions we would need to push that platform. And at the time, my team, one of my teams did lead the development of that core architecture. And so we tapped into these experts in designing an engine from scratch. And literally that engine was designed and developed from scratch, from zero. Experts in the chassis. So we knew that weight was going to be a key consideration. And in fact, there were some fun articles that after it was launched where the Cycle World guys, I think it was Cycle World, said, if Harley can deliver an adventure bike below this weight, I'm going to buy the entire team pizza. And then having to buy the entire team pizza because
nice. That's true.
Like what and so, but that knowing what the weight was going to be critical, we knew we were going to use the engine as a stressed member and have a really minimal frame. And there were a lot of naysayers. No, it's not going to be durable. No, you're going to have problems. But we knew that we had the expertise to pull it off.
That's cool.
But probably one of the biggest things that we spent a lot of time on is, well, a small group of us went to Europe and rode through a number of countries on competitive vehicles. And
what were you guys on, BMWs?
No, so this was for the platform as a whole. And so there were a bunch of like Street Fighter, Roadster, bikes. And I think it was like 8 days, 8 guys, 8 motorcycles, no support. So and we went from country to country to country and through.
That must have been cool though.
Alps, Dolomites. The only stuff you had was what you could strap onto a bike that didn't have luggage or anything. And so it was cool. And there were times, it was in near freezing weather, raining and snow on the sides of the roads and stuff like that. But good stuff. Yeah. And we got to experience the kind of rides that for many of our customers are the aspirational rides that one day in their life they would like to be able to do. But what was so valuable and a big part of the reason for doing this was we wanted to make sure we captured what really mattered most in the motorcycles in one of these epic aspirational rides. And so we went through this process where we had these rating sheets that we had put together before we left, and everybody would fill them out and get together at night, talk about them and how all the bikes rated and compared to each other. And then we talk about which ones we liked the best. And inevitably, the bikes that everybody liked the best were not the ones that ticked the most boxes in these objective metrics. And so we realized that there was something more there, and it was related to how it felt to ride it. It was like this emotional aspect of the motorcycle. And so Harley over the years has talked a lot about look, sound, and feel. And it was in particular the sound and the feel of the motorcycle, the sound, the vibration. And as we went through that week, it became more and more clear that was one of the key things we should be optimizing for. And so we came back, and the development of the engine and its interaction with the chassis, we actually put a bunch of science behind that, and some of the key Harley NVH experts, noise, vibration, and harshness experts, they developed metrics to help us quantify some of those aspects of sound and vibration.
Wow.
In power delivery and what that meant to the riding experience. And these are things that you guys have probably experienced a lot. Somebody will ride one motorcycle that's not a Harley and another one that's a Harley, maybe kind of in the same segment. And oftentimes, whether they say it exactly this way or not, the experience is the same. They come back and they say, I'm not sure why, but I like that Harley better. And what we did was we actually quantified some of the core things that create that reaction. So,
gotcha.
So the powertrain in that in that middleweight platform and certain aspects of the chassis were specifically optimized for that part of the experience. And so one of the things that some people will notice when they ride, say, the Pan America in comparison to a BMW GS or one of the other adventure touring bikes is that it feels different. And many would say it feels better. Can't tell you exactly why, but that was really important to us.
Vance, I wanted to just ask you a question because we're going to kind of continue on in the EV world, but I have to ask you this because I would always been so curious. Why did Harley decide to go into that adventure bike world with the Pan America? What was the reasoning behind that? Like, because you were there for the creation of that and you guys all went through that. Can you take the audience a little bit into why you guys decided to go into that niche?
There were really just two reasons, and it's pretty simple. It's not a real amazing answer. The first was we believed that we were capable of being competitive there. But the biggest reason was it was a large, growing, profitable segment that Harley had no product in.
Right.
And so anytime you're looking to grow, those things, large, profitable, and growing,
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the US for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a Butt Buffer for every rider's style. Get your Butt Buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
That's cool, man. Is the Pan America a good seller over in Europe or like in the European markets? Where is it best? Where is it best sold? Is it more better in the States or is it better overseas?
Honestly, I've been disconnected from those specific sales for so long. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much for answering that, though. That was awesome to find out. So,
yes. Oh, and you know what, Sergey, one more thing I should clarify is my teams did lead the all of the early development on those motorcycles, but then it was handed off to a team that really refined the designs and commercialized them.
Gotcha.
And brought the motorcycle to market. So that latter half or so of the development of those vehicles was not my responsibility. So
Gotcha.
I can't share as many details about that aspect of it, but really solid teams. There was some overlap. Some people stayed with it through to then, but I did not.
Gotcha.
All right. Cool. So the next chapter, we've been touching on it, but you opened up the Silicon Valley Livewire Labs, and that's a major leap for a company rooted in Milwaukee. Why was it so important to take Harley's EV vision to the heart of tech innovation in California?
Well, we actually started work on building up EV capabilities long before Livewire was a separate brand or company. And the reason for that, the reason we felt it was important is the original Harley Livewire, really good product, but it was many of the key systems, though Harley provided all the details and specifications, the development work and IP was done through tier one suppliers. So the battery was done by one supplier. The motor and motor controller or inverter was done by another supplier. And these are like automotive tier one kinds of suppliers. The charger by another supplier. And what we realized is we ended up with really good product, but we had a number of additional people in there that were taking margin that drove up the cost of the product. But even more importantly, we didn't always have aligned expectations or aligned objectives around what great looked like. So oftentimes their primary objective was reusing as much as they could from what they were doing for some car, or usually it was for a car, to speed their development process, lower their costs, and also changes to further improve the product were slow and expensive through them. So we realized pretty early on after developing the Harley Livewire that we needed to have more internal EV expertise to be able to develop some of those systems ourselves, to own it, to be able to change whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, and to optimize it for our application, not as kind of the lowest common denominator across some motorcycles and some cars. So that's why we began to work on building internal Harley Davidson EV expertise. But it turned out at that point in time, there wasn't a heck of a lot of that, especially in the Midwest.
Right.
There were really 2 locations in the US that were concentrations of EV capabilities, whether it was in like power electronics design, battery development, software engineering. It was either Detroit or Silicon Valley. And Detroit would have been easier. It's closer, easier to get to, less expensive. But at the time, we looked at that and said, it's going to feel a lot like what we know today, similar types of companies, old school, that we could really benefit from an infusion of fresh thinking, a more entrepreneurial spirit that is more common in Silicon Valley than it is in Detroit, and people that are more willing and accustomed to challenging the status quo. So I was one of those who pushed to go to Silicon Valley rather than Detroit. And at the time, it made sense financially, and got support all the way up through the board of directors. And so that's why we made the decision to do that. And so one of my responsibilities then was helping to choose the facility and then staffing it up, hiring all the leaders there, hiring much of the early staff, and ensuring that we brought the people in that could establish those in-house capabilities to lead the industry. So it was a fun time building that up. And for about 6 months, I spent about 50% of my time there, Silicon Valley and Milwaukee, kind of splitting time between the two.
Gotcha. Cool.
What was it like for you guys at that time? And this is the EV world in America is completely different than it is everywhere else, right? Because we're very spread apart. Obviously, battery life is extremely important, the type of cruising. When you guys were putting this together, you took it over all the way to Silicon Valley from Milwaukee area. And now what was going on throughout the company, the thinking and like, how can will this succeed here in the States, or like, I'm just curious about the targeting, how you were thinking about targeting something that's really not that popular in this country.
Yeah.
Especially in the 2 wheels world.
Well, so there was one example that suggested to us it might be possible to be successful, and that was Tesla, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Tesla is successful for a number of reasons. A big part of it was making bold moves when nobody else was doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And just having this belief that we'll figure this out, and just to be undeterred by any obstacle. Now, of course, Tesla nearly went bankrupt, probably on multiple occasions. And I think in some ways was in the right place at the right time and got lucky, but also made a lot of really bold moves that very few individuals or companies would have made. When we first started on electric motorcycles in 2010, just to give you a little bit of a feel for the rate of change. At that point, number one, a lot of the subcomponents you needed for EVs were very difficult to get or didn't exist. You had to develop them, certainly subsystems. Battery cells, that's the thing that most people are aware of. It's a big deal. They had far less capability than they have today. Far less energy density. So a given cell, how much energy it contains, it couldn't charge nearly as fast as it can today. And probably most important, the cost per kilowatt hour of energy was about $1,000. Today, that number is close to $100. So just the battery cells themselves were about 10 times as expensive as what they are today.
That's crazy.
So it was, at that time, there wasn't like this really clear, easy business case to be made for an EV. But we knew, and I still believe today, that it is no longer a matter of if transportation will be electrified. It's a matter of when and how. So yeah, there are issues with EVs today. There's not enough charging infrastructure. Many vehicles can't be charged at a fast enough rate. The range is not what people would like to have, especially in a motorcycle where you can't just put 1,000 pounds of batteries on a motorcycle.
Right.
So all of these challenges are real. But when you look at how far EV has come between when we started, and by the way, Harley was the very first, even though we rode the first prototype bikes in 2011, the first Harley Livewire didn't go to market until 2019. So it's like 8.5 years.
Wow.
And some of that was because just waiting until like costs came down a bit, some of the components became more accessible, and also Harley just having an internal struggle with, does it really make sense financially? But so there's been massive change already in the cost and the technology, and it's going to continue on. The costs aren't going to go down by another factor of 10, but they're going to keep improving. But even more importantly, charging rates, development of infrastructure. I think that's stalling a bit right now, but inevitably it's going to ramp up again in the U.S. At least. It's in Europe and other places. It's continuing to grow.
Right.
But it's going to electrify. And so I still believe that it makes sense to have electric vehicles, but we're in a tough time right now, not just in 2 wheels, but in 4 wheels for electric vehicles. And, a lot of companies are having to rethink what's happening there.
Yeah.
Right. And you got this next generation of kids coming up who are all on electric bicycles, right? So they're in tune with just throttle pull or hit the lever and go, which will transition. I mean, obviously it's great to get people on 2 wheels for the future of this younger generation, but I think that transition is going to go from that type of riding to the Livewire type of riding instead of the shifting gears and being in that tune. So thanks for answering that, Vance. Appreciate that.
Yep. So when Livewire officially spun off from Harley, you were at the helm. What was the most difficult part of leading the carve out, and what did that moment mean to you personally?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, I was at the helm for product development.
Right.
So I had a boss who was the president of the company, and for a period of time, Jochen Zeitz was CEO of not only Harley but also CEO of Livewire. And then more recently, he stepped back, and we brought in a new CEO, Karim. And but back to your question, what was it like doing the carve out? Well, for me, it was quite an experience. So I had the opportunity to do lots of really cool things, develop lots of new products, but never something like this, culminating in being there when we rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. But everything that led up to that, just meeting with the bankers and in the early stages with potential partners and potential investors, and putting together the story of why Livewire, why this thing made sense, and trying to help people understand that there's real potential here. So that was a ton of work. And there's just a ton of kind of administrative work that you go through to do an IPO. And but in addition to that, there were a number of people that we pulled from Harley and moved over to Livewire. Some of the people that were already involved in the core engineering, but there were lots of functions that we didn't, and we had to build. So, for example, purchasing or procurement group, much of that we had to build up, and there were a number of groups that we really had to build from scratch, or at least supplement the few resources that came over from Harley, and just so many things that had to be done in order to be able to effectively and efficiently operate as a separate company. I would never have anticipated just how much work that was, how much detail, and how much effort and cost it took.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That's crazy. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your managerial world when you were in product development or at Livewire, because you were kind of in charge of the product planning, engineering to supply management. On the management level, when you were hiring people to come in onto your team, what type of qualities were you looking for? Not only hiring, but promoting people from within to advance the next step?
Well, beyond the obvious subject matter expertise for whatever the given role is,
Right.
Some of the characteristics that I felt were most important were just a strong drive to succeed, a strong, what I call internal compass of figuring out what great is and getting to the point where you're well informed enough to have a very strong personal opinion about the direction we ought to go. High level of accountability, people who say what they're going to do and then do it, or let you know well in advance that there's an issue and we'll figure out how to address it. People who are willing to hold others accountable and to really be good teammates. Those are some of the things that I've learned over time are most critical for building a good team or a good leadership team, and characteristics that I think are most valuable in leaders. And then just finally, just a strong drive, just personal drive.
Did it matter to you if they wrote or not? Was it important for them to understand what they were building?
In many roles, yes, but not necessarily in all roles.
Okay.
In fact, I can remember at Harley, one of the people that I respected for many, many years. He's since retired. His name's Paul Lohr. He led all sorts of simulation, chassis development. At one point was, I think he was the chief engineer of all chassis related stuff. He didn't ride.
Really?
But
You're
you're right.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But he held himself accountable to do everything he possibly could to understand the mind of a rider. He'd go to bike night at the Harley Museum and talk to people. He'd hang out with them. He participated in all sorts of events. And so he had personal reasons for choosing to not ride.
Right.
But he was every bit as passionate about Harley Davidson, the brand, the experiences we provide, products themselves. And so in that case, he was an awesome leader, an awesome engineer, somebody who gave many great years to Harley Davidson. And I don't think the results suffered at all by the fact that he didn't ride.
That's cool.
In many cases, it's just people don't have that same approach. And so in certain roles, it's going to be very tough if they don't ride.
Understand.
That makes sense. So the S2 modular platform was a huge achievement. How did you balance performance, cost, and scalability to make sure it could serve multiple models like the Del Mar?
Performance, cost, and scalability. Well, performance we built in from the start. So there are many talented engineers at Livewire. And so we worked together to agree on a core architecture even before we start building the vehicles that we were confident would serve that whole range of products on the S2. At the same time, it was designed to be scalable. So modular is what enables the S2 platform to have the Del Mar, the Mulholland, the Alpinista, and in the future, potentially some others. I think there's been a public statement too that the S2 platform is going to be used for a maxi scooter with one of Livewire's partners, Kimco. So I don't think I'm saying anything out of line.
Right. No, that's been out there. Yeah.
So I think that was an important first step is clarifying the requirements that will be able to serve all different types of products in that like size and weight range where performance is not going to be an issue. Another thing is from day one, and I think for most EVs, from a technical standpoint, bigger battery is always better because you get more range, there's less stress on the battery for a given level of performance. Everything gets better with a bigger battery. There's only three things that don't get better, that actually get worse: the cost, the size, and the weight.
Yeah.
And so with every architecture, every platform, the goal is to figure out where that tipping point is and ensure that you have as much battery as you can get without going over that tipping point where you have too much cost, weight, or size.
Did the Del Mar Launch Edition sell out in 18 minutes?
Yes.
He did. And it was also named 24 Electric Motorcycle of the Year, correct?
Yeah, I don't think that was specific to the launch edition, but that was by MCN out of the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Del Mar specifically.
Vance, what was it about the bike that made it click with both the press and the riders?
Well, I think it really was just the next evolution of everything that we did on the Harley Livewire. So I talked about the purity of the riding experience, and we just took it to the next level on the S2. So by eliminating the gear reduction and just going straight from motor to rear sprocket, it saved weight, it saved packaging space, it reduced noise. And there's some good noise actually on EVs, but the gear set, not sure that was good noise. So it's just this even more direct connection on that vehicle between throttle and acceleration. And deceleration, just you can literally ride the bike just with the throttle, and it's just so smooth and so intuitive and so quiet. And again, it's a thing, preferences. Some people will want more noise, but for me, the more I rode the original Harley Livewire, which became the Livewire 1, and the S2 motorcycles, more and more I started to really love the more complete silence of it and just this like crazy rush of acceleration.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was
No. You answered it. We were talking about like why was it so popular with the press and the people, but you just explained it, so I get it.
Yeah, and it also it looks cool. I mean, it's kind of that dirt tracker.
Yeah, it is. It's got a good look. You guys did a great job with it, for sure.
Yeah. It's a bit more nimble and maneuverable than the Livewire 1, and yeah, it's a really well done bike. And I should say too, things like the vehicle dynamics, the Harley Davidson team of experts helped out a lot there. Some absolute expert riders that helped develop and tune the suspension and like steering geometry and stuff like that. So even now, Harley continues to provide some support, really critical support in key areas for Livewire.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Vance, having spent 17 years inside of Harley Davidson, what would you say was your biggest impact on the company's future from ICE to EV?
I think my biggest impact is like just how to helping people think differently. it's not like I had any one piece of, amazing insight or anything, but consistently with my teams, I pushed for people to be creative, to be innovative, to think about our riders, and just to never settle, and to just keep pushing for great, and not accept current technical limitations, but just to always push for better.
So basically, like you were allowed at Team Losi, you let your people get creative and think outside the box, which was great, because I mean that only brings out more creativity. Let's get into a little bit of. I mean, your career is amazing. You've spanned in different companies, been in the motorsports world for a long time. What was some of the harder decisions that you had to make in your career? Kind of like, were there ever moments where you were looking to maybe try something new, or did you just love it enough? And how did you balance yourself? And what did you learn from those moments, the hard times going through? Because everybody, there's always peaks and there's always valleys. So,
yeah, for me, the hard times personally, there were really two. One was, a number of years back in my career when I had a supervisor who was courageous enough to help me understand that though I was quite strong technically, my leadership style was pretty terrible. And that though some people wanted to work with me, there were plenty who didn't, because they felt that they weren't heard by me, that I didn't care about their opinion.
Right.
It certainly wasn't my intent, but I had some major blind spots in that area. And so that for me, that was really tough to hear. And one of the times that I heard that, it came with a demotion from a director level position to a senior manager position into a role that I really didn't want.
wow.
And it was hard to accept that. And in fact, if I'm honest, I actually considered leaving the company then.
Wow.
Leaving Harley. I got some wise counsel from someone outside the company that said,
Nice.
don't make a rash decision.
Right.
And that was where I really set my mind to taking the feedback seriously and work and really understanding where those blind spots were, and starting the journey to become a better, more authentic leader that people would really want to follow. And so, far from perfect even today, but I am confident that I made huge strides, and I am proud of the type of leader that I am now.
That's awesome. Thank you for
So
sharing
that's the
that.
first one.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
The second one that I think for any leader who has to face this, it's one of the toughest thing to do, and that's letting people go.
Yeah.
Especially people who you care about, people who are talented.
Yeah.
And like many in the EV world, the last year or so has been very tough. And so before I left Livewire, I was responsible for a pretty significant streamlining of the organization and consolidating facilities. And with that, streamlining the size of the teams. And that included letting a number of people go who were talented, passionate, great people.
Right.
And yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah. That's a brutal thing to
No
go
other way
through.
to say. Yeah.
Well,
But for the
go ahead. Sorry, Vance.
company, it's part of kind of resetting and ensuring that the company can weather this current storm and be ready to
Right.
thrive when things turn around a bit.
Right. Difficult, but necessary to keep the other jobs intact. Well,
Yeah. And then as part of that, we agreed that one of the other roles that needed to be cut was mine.
man, that's a difficult pill to swallow, I'm sure.
Yep.
So on to a lighter note, looking at the industry today, what excites you most about the next 10 years of two-wheel innovation?
Are there emerging trends that we're underestimating? Are there things on the horizon that you're excited about? What do you think is going on?
There aren't a ton of signs to me right now of major innovation. And I think that's one of the challenges for the industry. I think it's an industry that right now is trying to figure out what's next. So the EV was one of these things that was potentially what's next. As I said earlier, I believe it is what's next. The question is when. And when will it really become more mainstream?
Yeah.
I think with a few exceptions, you look at even like racing, MotoGP is really cool.
Very.
That's been fun, especially this year to watch. I mean, super competitive,
Very.
just awesome race.
Yep.
But what does that mean to real riders? For example, Ducati, who's been pretty dominant. You look at their bikes, amazing bikes, but they've been developed to the point where they can just tear up a racetrack. But what does that mean to a normal rider?
Mm.
And so I feel like it's an industry that's trying to figure out who it is going forward. And I'm not sure there are clear answers yet.
Mm-hmm.
It seems
For me.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying
No, go
it seems like the industry is leaning towards performance now. Everything is bigger horsepower, better handling, especially. And I'm gonna stick with the Harley Davidson world. Sport bikes are sport bikes. They're always developed, but it seems like Harley is now getting into. If you see most of their advertising or most of the stuff that they're pushing, even some of their new stuff with the CVO models, everything is performance based, correct?
Absolutely. And for most of my career, that's exactly where my head was. More performance. This isn't good enough. But for many companies, many bikes in the industry now, I'm not sure more is better.
I agree.
And yeah, and so very different than I felt for much of my time in the motorcycle industry. I think there's something out there for starting to look more at what would a really lightweight vehicle look like.
Yeah.
What kind of segments could that fit in where at the same time you're maybe improving the affordability?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
you're right, and
right.
that's what they were saying. Like in the AMD magazine, I was reading that like Harley's kind of refocusing now because how many people realistically can afford a $60,000-$70,000 hyped up bagger that they're putting out? So what's happening is they're losing that price point with a more affordable bikes where people can get into as a first bike. So they're trying to, I was reading that they were kind of refocusing and do a lot of concentration in those $10,000 range motorcycles. So is that something that you've been reading or hearing about also?
Well, actually, it's a little bit I've been reading about that, but it's also just kind of my general feeling.
Gotcha.
I think back to, for many years, what I rode were Softails.
Mm-hmm.
Having come from the sport bike world, when I came to Harley, it's like, well, I got to ride Harleys now, because I wasn't riding Harley before. I was riding Buells, other sport bikes.
Of course.
When I came to Harley, my bike of choice was Softails. Mostly breakouts. Had a number of breakouts.
Breakouts are great bikes.
Boring. But yeah, this idea of what would a kind of a lightweight, happy version of a breakout be like? If you took 150 pounds out of it, but you could still ride relatively comfortably to up. I can remember commuting to and from work at Harley on a breakout, and I refer to it as just surfing. I was like surfing the traffic, and it was really cool. It was almost like Zen, just
it's beautiful.
Flowing cars on my breakout.
I hated that they changed the design of the breakout. The original breakout was so badass. That big fat tire in the back. It just looked great, man. It was a pro street looking bike. and then they kind of narrowed it down and made it smaller, and it just started looking like every other one. It looked like the Fat Bob, and like I was so disappointed what they did to that breakout. That breakout was a cool bike. Those years, what was it, 09 to when they changed it? It went from 09 to like 17, I think, and then they changed the design in 18.
I don't remember the exact
Broke
years.
my heart, man, when I saw that. The new, I'm like, oh, this sucks. It looks like a slim, like a little bit of a beefed up slim to me. I'm like, oh, terrible. Bad decision.
Yeah.
Hey, Vance.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those ones that I had.
Those are cool.
Yeah.
Vance, I wanted to ask you a question before we get into the speed round. For young engineers, future CTOs listening to this podcast, what's your raw and filtered advice on leading big innovation within a legacy brand, kind of without losing the soul or vision along the way?
Oh, interesting question. So to try and answer that, let's take it away from Harley.
Just in general, right?
Let's say Ford Motor Company, which I've never worked for, so I'll make it more generic and maybe more relevant to more people. So what I know is that it is hard to innovate in a large established company where people have preconceived notions about what the company stands for, what their products are. It is hard. It is far, far easier to innovate in a smaller or a startup company. And frankly, if innovation is required going forward, that puts those slow moving, more conventional thinking, traditional companies at risk. I mean, you only have to look at automotive EVs and what's happening in China. To say, if you're a GM or a Ford, be scared right now.
Absolutely.
Because, VW finally just in one area, they said, we give up. We're going to give a bunch of money to Rivian, and the Rivian architecture, the software architecture in particular, is going to underpin every new electric VW.
Wow.
So, yeah, innovating in a large established company, it's just hard. But if that's your goal, where I've been successful in doing that is you need to be able to clarify the why, clarify impact to the customer. And that's ultimately what matters most. But you also have to be able to speak to the bottom line and financial why, because these are large publicly traded companies, and ultimately that's going to be the primary driver for major decisions.
Yeah. And starting out like you did in a smaller companies, which kind of unleashed your creative juices, which is the most important. So you're absolutely right. If anybody listening, get into a smaller firm, man, you get to do a lot more hands-on. You're not just locked into one specific job that you have to do. You kind of have to learn a little bit of everything, which expands your, marketability later on 10 times forward. So, Vance, where can people follow you? Where can they stay in touch with you, touch base? Where are you active on social media?
Pretty much just LinkedIn. At this point, I haven't put much effort into anything beyond that.
Okay.
And even there, it's not like I post a lot. So.
All right, cool.
TBD for the time being. Just check me out on LinkedIn.
Yeah, man. He's semi-retired, living up in the mountains, driving his motorcycle. So leave him alone. Let him enjoy. He's put the grind in. Now it's time to have some fun. All right, man. Well, you ready for the speed round? We got some good fun questions for you.
Let's do it.
We're gonna put 2 minutes on the clock. Ben's gonna start it up.
Ready to rock?
Yep, let's do it.
First question, best motorcycle you've ever owned or ridden?
S2 Alpinista.
All right.
Nice.
RC cars or motorcycles, what's more fun to tinker with?
Motorcycles.
Right on. All right, you get one track day, electric bike or gas power beast?
Electric bike, primarily because I've ridden on tracks many times with ice bikes, but I've never been able to do it on a proper track on an EV.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
For fun. All right, which comes first in a design, form, function, or caffeine?
None of the above. A purpose.
Purpose.
Purpose. Nice.
That's a good answer. All right, best built motorcycle in your opinion of all time.
That is a hard
but wait,
question,
we're gonna do this. We're gonna do one from Buell and one from Harley Davidson, since you've been a part of both.
Okay.
Let's do best built motorcycle by Buell.
The XB9R.
Love that bike.
All right.
Harley.
I think the 2024 baggers are pretty darn awesome.
Yeah.
Even though I've never been a bagger rider, got to give props to that
Yeah,
team
man.
and the work they did.
Yeah.
Right on. Cool. All right, bucket list motorcycle trip you still have left to do.
I haven't done it yet, but I'd love to ride the full Blue Ridge Parkway right here where I am now.
Yeah,
Man.
that's so nice. Lovely
I've been
curves and
fortunate. I've
twists.
done it and I loved it.
Yeah. All right. More stressful, leading a boardroom pitch to investors or launching a new prototype on a tight deadline?
Both are on a scale of 1 to 10. Both are 100.
That's fine.
Okay.
that's
What's
cool.
the nerdiest engineering habit you still have that your family teases you about?
I'm not sure if I have one, or at least they don't know about it.
Okay. He hides it well.
But I'll tell you what I do is I still design stuff today. In addition to designing our home, I have a side passion project. I'm designing an electric mountain bike.
Electric
cool.
mountain bike. So cool.
And there's some.
Are
great
you, with
rides.
what? With hopes to put it into production?
I don't know. Maybe I thought about maybe building a prototype and taking it to Sea Otter or one of the big mountain bike get-togethers, bicycle get-togethers.
Right on.
We'll see.
Yeah, there's a
Let's
bunch
go.
of good spots there in North Carolina by you.
Yeah, man.
All right, you're building a dream team for a custom EV bike project. Pick one person from history to join your team.
I would love to have Eric Buell join briefly,
Yeah.
not for the whole thing.
Good and
briefly.
Before he starts
I
waving his hands around and jumping on tables.
Yeah.
All right.
It's hard to beat that level of creativity.
That's a great
That's
answer.
cool, man. That's really cool to get inside of that, because not a lot of people know Eric Buell, and for you to be able to fill us in with that information, that was so awesome.
All right, one book you'd recommend everyone should read.
Extreme ownership.
Great
Extreme
one.
ownership.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Oh, definitely read that one.
I'm writing that down right now.
Yep, that's a great one.
by Jocko Willink and Lee
Yep.
Babbitt, I think.
The 4 a.m. Club. All right, you've got 2 hours to yourself. Are you hitting the garage, the trail, or the couch with a beer to breathe?
At my best, I'm hopping on the mountain bike and hitting the trails.
Right on. Solid. All right, if you could have dinner with someone past or present, who would it be?
Though I don't love what he's done recently, I'd love to sit down and have dinner with Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Okay.
As soon as you said the recently comment, I knew it was coming. I got to take this opportunity to give Serge a hard time. He says Elon Musk every time. I think I know.
That's Elon. That's true.
Yeah.
Ellen, yeah.
Right.
All right. Guilty pleasure. Go to alcoholic beverage, and if you don't drink, go to snack. And I'm going to add to that. If you do drink, there's so many awesome breweries around you. Which one of those is your favorite?
I love Highland Brewing, but I am a kind of a cocktail nerd. Have been for probably 10 years. So my go-to is a Negroni or one of the millions of variations of the Negroni, but I like just about any new cocktail.
Okay. Good.
All right, we're gonna talk offline a little bit about the Asheville selections. There's so many good stuff, so many good places up there.
Yeah, man.
Who's more stubborn, engineers, riders, or marketing teams?
Marketing teams.
Okay.
I'm surprised with your certainty. I would have figured engineers maybe are up there, but
Well, engineers are creatives, so they create, they put it to plan, right? Then riders obviously enjoy it. The marketing teams are the ones who kind of just, you throw it in their lap and they start bitching.
I'm going from personal experience with a manufacturing background and hearing the battles between shop floor guys and engineers, and there's so many instances that are very similar across the board. But marketing teams, I 100% get that with some personal
Yeah, for sure.
too. All right, last question. One word to describe what motorcycles have meant to your life.
One word. Wow. That's a tough one. Exhilaration.
Nice.
Good word. That's a
Great
$4
word, man.
there.
Great word.
Bang oh.
If I had two, I would say freedom and exhilaration, but
Yeah.
I got to go with exhilaration.
All right, cool. Nice sneaking that in there. Well, you made it. You survived the speed round.
You survived 2 hours with us, and you survived the speed round. So, man, but hey, Vance, in all sincerity, man, this has been so awesome for us. I mean, we're fortunate that we get to talk to people from all around the world in this industry who've done so many great things for us and for the industry. But to hear it from a management position and this high level end position, working with companies like Buell, Great American Company, Harley Davidson, Great American Company, it's been so awesome for us to get that inside scoop. So thank you so much for taking time off your mountain bike and off your Pan America to come and sit with us for a little bit and some history about you. You've got an amazing journey, and thank you for sharing it with us and our audience.
Well, thank you. It's just as fun for me to be able to reminisce about these things and talk about motorcycles and talk about all the reasons that people like us love this stuff. And I've been fortunate to be able to do what I love for most of my career. And it's really been great talking with you guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, Vance.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Next time we'll have you, Elon, and Elon Musk on. So we'll have the three
The twins.
chat with this thing. So.
Cool. Thank you,
Thanks.
Vance. Have a great
Thanks,
week.
Vance. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you
week.
guys. Bye-bye.
Take care, bud.